Hello, I'm Stevie.
You're not Stevie. Oh, I'm Leon.
Hello.
What are you going to do with me?
I'm going to ask you some questions about your experiences in the war.
Oh gosh, no, are you?
Yeah. Can you tell me your full name and when and where you were born?
Well, my name is Leon Armstrong. My Christian name is Leon because my brother was born on Christmas Day and he was named Noel, French for Christmas. I was born on Boxing Day 8 years later, so my parents turned his name round and gave it to me, N-O-E-L-L-E-O-N, that's my name, Leon. And I was born on Boxing Day in 1919, so that makes me 92 at the moment.
Leon, what were you doing before the war started?
When the war broke out in 1939, just before the war broke out, I had already got some aviation experience, flying experience, because my sister and her friend took me and my friend, my boyfriend, took us to Mayfield Airfield in Brentwood, Essex, where there was a flying circus, and they paid for the two of us to go in an aircraft for about 5 or 10 minutes, I suppose. That was my first experience of flying, and I really enjoyed it. And when war broke out, just before war broke out, I volunteered for the Royal Air Force VR, Volunteer Reserve, and I was going to do some flying, but when war broke out in September 1939, it was September, yes, it was September, I had a letter from the Air Ministry saying that recruitment under the VR scheme had now terminated. If I wanted to go flying, I'd have to go to a recruiting centre, because recruiting centres were being set up all over the country and the outbreak of war. So I did. I went to a recruiting centre and put my name down, and I was attested. That means that I was sworn in and given a number, which I can't now remember because I've had 4 numbers. I'll tell you why in a moment. And I went back home and waited and waited and waited, and I saw an advertisement in the newspaper calling for people, men with technical experience, to join the Royal Air Force as signals officers. Well, I had some signalling experience. I knew a bit about radio and telephony. I was on a telephony course at my firm, so I applied and waited and waited and waited, and then one day, a few days later, I had 2 letters. One was addressed to me as AC2, that's Aircraft from Second Class LV Armstrong, come and join up at Uxbridge to start the course in flying. The other letter, which had come by the same post, said 81749, that was an officer's number, pilot officer LV Armstrong, come to Loughborough to start an officer's training course. I thought there came these 2 letters. One was addressed to me as an airman, the other addressed to me as an officer. What do I do? So I went screaming to my father and said, Dad, what do I do now? So he said, you want to be an officer, don't you? I said, yes, but I want to do some flying as well. I had to go to Air Ministry, and at Air Ministry I was interviewed. They cancelled my training as air crew, and I went to Loughborough. Loughborough was a station which had been set up in order to train officers. And I did a training course as an officer in radio, and while I was doing the course, I saw an AMO as an Air Ministry order inviting non-flying officers to apply for a flying course. I thought, oh, that's just what I want. So I applied, and what happened? a signal came from Air Ministry cancelling my appointment as an officer. So what do I do now? I think they took everything belonging to officers away from me, my identity card, and I had to go. I was now in a place called Cranwell in Lincolnshire. They gave me a railway warrant. I went to London. I went back home to my parents who lived in London, and thought, well, what do I do now? So my father suggested I go to Air Ministry and get the officers' course cancelled. Back home as a civilian with no Air Force experience at all. I thought, well, what do we do now? I wanted to do some flying, so I had to go to a recruiting centre, and I was sworn in and tested as air crew. Have I told you that already?
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Well, I went down to what happened now? Oh yes, I went to this flying course, and I was now posted to a place called, I've forgotten the name of it now, it's in the Midlands, and I had to now go to America to train as a pilot, and I was trained by the United States Navy, who had a training base in Florida, on the Gulf of Mexico. I went down, I did a course on flying Catalina aircraft. The Catalina aircraft is an aircraft that, it's a flying boat, and it can land on water, and if it's equipped with wheels, it can land on the ground as well. I went through this course. It was a long course, a sound course, a very good course of flying, starting with basic flying aircraft, similar to the basic Air Force, Royal Air Force aircraft, Tiger Moth. It was just on basic training. I graduated now to more advanced aircraft and finished up on flying boats, and I got my wings. They awarded me with my American, what they call the Wings of Gold, together with my Royal Air Force wings, and I was now on a troop ship coming back home.
What year was this?
I was on this course in July 1942. I went first of all on the troop ship to Nova Scotia, and after Nova Scotia I went by train to Toronto, where I went through what's called an induction course. The induction course was just sort of welcoming me to the Royal Air Force, the Royal Canadian Air Force, and from Toronto I got on a train to go to a place called Pensacola, 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 which was a naval aviation flying base. There I was taught to fly, and I finished up on Catalina aircraft. The Catalina aircraft was a flying boat used for patrolling the sea for submarines and shipping. And after I completed the course, I now came back, having got my wings. I was on a troop ship and came back home. But unfortunately, the troop ship contained a lot of American airmen and soldiers on their first trip to Europe, and unfortunately one of them caught a disease. What do you call it? A simple disease. I can't think of the name now. Smallpox, that's right. And the whole ship was quarantined. I was now with about 300 other airmen. There was about 3,000 American troops and about 300 airmen. And the airmen were sent to a place called Padgate It's near, I believe it's near Liverpool or Manchester, and we were under canvas in quarantine for 3 weeks. We weren't allowed out of the camp, and all of us had been away from home for some 9 or 12 months. We all wanted to get home, but we weren't allowed out of the camp until the quarantine was over. We were allowed to telephone, of course, and I've now finished up back home with my wings up as a sergeant pilot, and we're now awaiting a posting.
What was your first posting?
Oh yes, it was to Cranwell OTU, it's Officers Training Unit, and we were flying we were flying Whitley aircraft. They were old aircraft of Bomber Command, converted to maritime work, and the Whitleys enabled us to search for submarines and make an attack with depth charges. We were at a place called Cranwell, and after Cranwell we went to, where was it? We went to Wick in Scotland, and we were flying out to Norway and Iceland and out into the Atlantic looking for submarines, and if we saw them, make an attack with depth charges. And after a while the squadron was deployed from Wick to a place called Davidstow Moor.
What was a depth charge?
A depth charge was it was a sort of bomb which was activated by different pressures of water, and when it was dropped into the water it would begin to sink, and when it reached a certain level, depending on how it was set, it would explode. A mighty explosion would make a hole in the side of the submarine, and caused a lot of mayhem there, I can tell you. So the idea was to fly an aircraft equipped with what is known as a lee light. A lee light is a sort of searchlight. Searchlight is it was named after a Wing Commander Lee, who invented it, and the searchlight was fitted to the belly of the aircraft, and the idea was to hunt out a submarine, detect it with radar, and having detected it, make a beeline for it, coming down low to about 50 feet, in line with the submarine. Hopefully it was a submarine. If it wasn't a submarine, it would be the periscope, which comes up from the submarine, just to have a look out above the sea level. And having made the approach and coming down to 50 feet, we would fly over the depths, over the submarine, and drop the depth charges, a series of about 4, 2 either side of the track of the submarine, to explode close to the submarine and hopefully to blow it out of the water, or make a hole in it anyway. And that was the idea of the depth of the Catalina aircraft and the Whitley aircraft, and later on we were equipped with Wellington aircraft after having been deployed from Wick in Scotland to Davidstow Moor in Cornwall. Cornwall we were now flying, instead of flying out to Norway or to Iceland, we were flying across the Atlantic, down the Bay of Biscay, and seeking submarines. If we had shipping, any shipping that we saw would be reported by radio. And the longest trip I ever did was in a Whitley aircraft from Davidstow Moor in Cornwall down to the Scilly Isles, and then to set course from Scilly Isles to the north coast of Spain, and having reached the north coast of Spain, to turn round and come back to the Isles of Scilly, turn round again and make another track to the north coast of Spain and back again, searching for submarines all the time. And this trip, the longest trip that I ever did, was of 11 hours 20 minutes, which in a Whitley aircraft is really hard going.
Were you flying the plane, and what was it like to fly in a Whitley?
I was a second pilot then. The captain of the aircraft, he was in charge, and the second pilot was we took over from him when he got cramp or became tired. But our flights were something 6 or 7 hours long, and sitting in one position all the time as the pilot was a bit tiring. And we had to sort of swap about, taking turns to fly. But he would always take off the aircraft and land the aircraft. And what was it like in the aircraft? During, or most of the time, we were flying at about 1,000 feet, I suppose. We're coming down to about 50 feet if we saw a submarine or something that we wanted to identify and report. It was a bit cramped. There wasn't a lot of room in the aircraft. There were 6 men in the aircraft. There was the 2 pilots, a navigator, and 3 men who were known as wireless operator air gunners. They would take it in turn to sit at a radio set, and they used to swap from the radio set to a machine gun. So he used to take it in turn during the flight. The flight would be around about 6 hours long, 5.5, 6 hours long, but a longer flight would go over 7 hours. It was a bit nauseating, I tell you.
Did you ever know that you sunk a submarine?
No, I didn't, because after flying over the submarine and dropping the depth charges, you'd now be out of sight, but the rear gunner would probably have seen something, but unless you turned round and came back over the path of the submarine, you wouldn't know whether you've sunk it or not. I'm not aware that I ever sunk a submarine, but I wasn't only after submarines, I was after shipping as well. We had to report any shipping that we saw back to base by radio.
Did you know any people who did sink a submarine?
Oh yes, I did. In fact, one of the men who trained with me in Pensacola, Flight Lieutenant Cruikshank, he spotted a submarine off the Lofoten Islands, that's off the coast of Norway, and he saw it and made an attack, but when he made the attack, unfortunately, the depth charges didn't release. So he knew that, so he had to turn around and come back, by which time the submarine crew were aware that there was an enemy aircraft about, and they came up on the surface of the, on the deck of the submarine, manned the gun, and when Cruikshank, that was the name of the pilot, when he turned around and came back to make another attack, they fired at him and shot him up and killed the navigator, and injured some of the crew, and injured the pilot as well. And he turned around, but he made the attack, and he learned later that he had actually sunk it, and because of that he was awarded the Victoria Cross, which was the highest decoration that any man in any service could be awarded. He was the only man who trained with me in Pensacola who was awarded the Victoria Cross.
Where were you posted after David Stonewall?
I was now posted to a captain's course, because I was the second pilot. My pilot was a Canadian who lives in near Halifax in Canada. He's still alive, he must be well over 90 now. He was older than I am, and I'm 92. I went on the course as a captain. I got my own crew. We went to, where did we go after that? Went from there, oh yes, I went to a ferry unit to ferry Wellington aircraft out to North Africa. And I ferried from Herne, that's near Bournemouth in the south of England, went from Herne down across the Bay of Biscay down to Morocco, and landed in Morocco and handed the aircraft over to a unit there who had a number of Wellington pilots, and they flew the aircraft on to bases in the Middle East. I flew back to England, or to UK, in a Dakota aircraft of British Overseas Airways, and came back home now, back to the ferry unit. I was now asked ordered to fly another aircraft from UK, from Herne, out to North Africa. When I got out to North Africa, I found I'd been posted now, posting me to transfer to another unit. I was posted to an Australian squadron based in Bone, in Algeria. Don't look for Bone now because it's been renamed Anabar. So in Bone there was a unit there, a squadron of Wellington aircraft, and I was now a qualified Wellington pilot with a crew, and we flew up and down the Mediterranean, up and down the North African coast, into and out of Malta, into and out of Italy. We went to Sardinia. We were based in Sardinia to give support to the Allied landings in southern France.
What unit were you in, and what was it like flying over Africa and the Mediterranean?
Well, what was your question? What was it like?
What was the unit number?
My unit number was 458. It was an Australian squadron of Wellington aircraft, and I was now not a second pilot. I was now a captain. I had my own crew, and it was I'd fly across the Mediterranean to either to Malta, where we had a detachment, or from Italy, Foggia in Italy. It's in the middle of Italy. Sometimes we went up to right up to the northeast corner near Venice for we were looking for submarines and any enemy shipping. Fortunately, we never encountered any serious anti-aircraft flak, but we were flying off the southern coast of France. We were attacked by an Arado fighter of the Italian Air Force. I never saw it at all, but the rear gunner told me there's an aircraft coming up. Knowing that we were close to the enemy bases, we were accompanied by an aircraft, a fighter aircraft of the Royal Air Force, and we were flying in formation with another aircraft of my own unit. So the pair of us were flying up and down, doing parallel courses off the coast of France until we had an attack by an Arado Italian-based aircraft, and fortunately the fighter aircraft that was accompanying us saw it before I did. I never saw it at all, but my crew did. He told us to get the nose down on them, right down close to the water, and fly back home as fast as it could. Well, the aircraft that was flying in company with me didn't see anything at all. It didn't even hear the radio broadcast from the fighter aircraft. Saw me put my nose down, right down to the level of sea level, fly back home. I met the pilots a little later on in the mess at the base. They said, "What happened to you? Why are you suddenly scooted off like that?" I said, "Didn't you hear the radio broadcast about the fighter aircraft?" "No, I didn't know. I didn't hear about fighter aircraft." But this fighter Arado was now attacked by the Beaufighter aircraft which had been accompanying us, and they exchanged a few shots. I didn't see a thing, and I was glad to get out of it anyway. So fortunately I didn't see any enemy aircraft.
You said you were covering the invasion of southern France. Why were you doing that, and when was it?
Well, France was enemy occupied, and they had made an attack at D-Day on the coast of Normandy, and about 3 months later they made, the British or the Allies made an attack on the southern coast of France so that we could now squeeze the Germans out of the country. That would be around about 1940, about 3 months after the invasion in Normandy. When was Normandy? 1945. 1944. So this invasion of southern France by Allied forces must have been around about September or October of 1944. And we were, being a maritime squadron, we were covering that. We were flying up and down, accompanying the invasion, just looking for enemy shipping. I was briefed by the control before leaving, do not fly over any shipping because you may be attacked by enemy aircraft. I never saw a single ship, but my radar operator, who got his radar set going, said that the sea was simply crowded with hundreds of boats. There must have been the boats that were landing craft going up to the southern coast of France. So it was all exciting, but I didn't see a thing.
What happened after that?
The squadron was still in Beaune. We now had to go into Italy. We flew to Italy and made a base at a place called Foggia, Foggia. Foggia was an Italian landing base. And we flew from there up and down the Adriatic Sea, which is between the coast of Italy and the Yugoslav coast, up towards Venice, and then later we moved up to a base very close to Venice called Ancona. You could see these all on the map if you had a map of Italy, and we were flying into and out of Ancona, looking for submarines and looking for shipping up in the right up in the northwest corner of the Adriatic Sea. So that was all exciting as well.
Okay.
What are your memories of the last few months of the war?
So the last 3 months of the war I spent in Gibraltar, because we're now covering the entrance to the Mediterranean, still looking for submarines and any enemy shipping, and carrying out exercises into and out of Gibraltar, which was it was a base with a short runway which had been extended out into the sea to make it adaptable for heavy aircraft. And one of the things we were doing there was to train newcomers to the work of the Leylight. The Leylight being an airborne searchlight operated remotely by somebody up in the nose of the aircraft. The light itself, the searchlight itself was in the belly of the aircraft, lowered by the operator up in the nose. And he used to give instructions to the pilot about running into the object as he's attacking. We used to carry out exercises with a boat, a boat which was going into and out of the harbour and into the waterways of Gibraltar. And on one occasion an aircraft was making an approach to the. This was all at night, with the searchlight being illuminated, when an obstacle was seen on the surface by the radar operator. And this aircraft was doing a training exercise now, flying down the ray of the searchlight, and unfortunately, he instead of levelling off or approaching the boat, he went straight into the water and crashed into the water, and every man on board was killed, with the exception of the operator of the searchlight, who was up in the nose, and he was flung out through the nose into the water. Unfortunately, this happened just a few days before the end of the war. 5 men and a crew of 6 all killed just before the end of the war. It was a tragic incident.
How did you celebrate the end of the war in 1945?
Well, I was now posted to Italy I was in Gibraltar, posted to Italy, and while I was in the air flying from Gibraltar to Italy, war was ended. As I said, there was a tragic incident with this trainee flying the lee light onto a target. I went to Italy then, and I was waiting in a PDC, it was a personnel disposal centre, waiting my next posting. I was now posted to command headquarters in Naples. We later transferred to Cairo, and I was posted into an aircraft accident investigation department. I was examining reports of aircraft that had crashed in the Middle East. That was just before I was now posted home for demobilisation. I don't think there was any celebration of the end of the war. I suppose we had a few drinks in the bar, but nothing really spectacular.
When did you meet your wife and when did you get married?
When we were both still at prep school, but we separated then because we were only youngsters. Prep school was about 14 or 15, but I had been very impressed with my wife, and I thought, oh, she's the one I want to marry, I feel sure. But then I went into the Royal Air Force, and I lost touch with her. I came back, and but it so happened that I was coming back from school on the train, went through King's Cross Station, and on the platform opposite, I just happened to, just an hour in the rush hour, around about 4:30, 5 o'clock, I spotted my girlfriend, as she was then, waiting to get on another train. I got out of my train and I came up behind her and spotted her and said, I'm coming home with you. And she was absolutely amazed that I'd spotted her. Then, of course, I went to the Royal Air Force, and during the Royal Air Force service, I thought, well, it was about time we got married, and I popped the question to her at Manor House Station on the Underground, and she was going home after her work, and I was going home. What was I doing? I was in the Royal Air Force. Well, I can't remember what I was doing at Manor House Station, but I happened to spot her there, and I came home with her, and I asked if I could marry her then, and I don't know what her reply was, but that was in 1942 rather. We were married in 1943. I was now in uniform, and I got my wings up, which was quite something to be proud of then. I was only a kid, I was only, I was only 23 years of age. And we got married in 1943, January 1943. But sadly, she doesn't. She died about 5 years ago. I used to live in London. I lived in the same house in London for 5 years. For 50 years rather. But the last 5 years of my life there was full of anxiety and anguish over my wife's health. she suffers from Alzheimer's disease or severe mental disorder, and she didn't know me right up to the end. She didn't know who I was. She thought I was her father at one stage, and she introduced me to groups of friends that she had now met. She introduced me as her brother. So it was all very, very sad. My son, who now lived in Birmingham, could see what I was going through and suggested that I move from London to Birmingham, which I did. I sold my 4-bedroom house in London and I came up to Birmingham, where my son was living. He was then living in Moseley, and I went into a retirement flat, one of a block of flats in King's Heath, Birmingham, which is where I now live. I've been there for 6 years, no more than that, but 8 years now. But my wife died, as I said, about 5 years ago, and so I'm living on my own, but I've made new friends in this block of flats, and I'm living a comfortable but not entirely happy life, because I miss my friends and neighbours in London, but I've made new friends, of course. My son is very supportive. He comes in to see me on the way home from his work. He's a lecturer at Solihull College. He comes in and sees me about twice a week. So he looks after me. Surname was Schofield, Doreen Schofield.
Were you in London during the Blitz, and what was that like?
I was only in London during the Blitz for a brief time because I was in the service, and my service took me up usually anywhere in the country. I used to come home to my parents, who were living in London at the time, and it was pretty grim. But I'm glad to get out of it, in fact. It wasn't very pleasant.
My friend Ruby wants to ask you a question.
Okay. Where is she?
Okay. On you go.
Did you enjoy what you did, or did it feel like a duty that you have to do it?
It was a duty. We just got on with it. It was something we had to do. Sometimes it was an enjoyable fly. The flying was enjoyable, but if we had to make an attack on a submarine or an attack on a port, sometimes we had to go after oil bases on the coast. We just had to get on with it, and if you didn't get on with it, well, it was just too bad. You had to enjoy it.
Yeah. What happened to you after the war?
Well, I was now posted back to England from Cairo, where I'd been working at the Aircraft Accident Investigation Department. I was posted back to England, where I was demobilised. I was demobilised in 1946, and the last day of service was on April Fool's Day, 1946. Couldn't have been a better day, could it?
What was your final rank?
I finished up as a squadron leader. I had been on a commander's course in Malta, came back to the squadron in Foggia, found that the squadron was on the move now to Gibraltar. So after a night's rest, I flew from Foggia to Gibraltar, where I learnt that I'd been promoted to squadron leader, which was my final rank. I was a squadron leader on the base then. I was in charge of a wing. That was a group of pilots, a group of aircrew, and when I was posted now to the Accident Investigation Department, I was a squadron leader, which was the final rank before I was demobilised.
I've been told you've been awarded the MBE award. When did you get it, and why did you get it?
It stands for Member of the British Empire. It's part of it's the lowest rank of British Empire awards. There's the MBE, and above that is the OBE, then there's the CBE, KBE, GBE for senior ranks. MBE, why did I get it? Well, after I came back from Pensacola during my training, I thought it was about time we got together, because during the 4 years of training the training was being undertaken in America. I was only there for 2 years, just about a year, 1941, 1944. I thought it'd be rather nice to get together. So at that time, it was in 1945, 1946, those newspapers were offering free advertisements to servicemen to have a reunion of any unit that they had been involved in. Well, I had an idea of a reunion, and I applied for one of these freebie advertisements, and I arranged a reunion in London for members of the members who had trained at Pensacola. And the first reunion, we had 100 turn up, which was quite astounding. 100 people for the first reunion. That would be in 1945. And after another reunion, it was decided to form an association, which we did. It was known as the British Pensacola Veterans Association. Veterans is an American term for what we call an ex-serviceman. British Pensacola Veterans, and we had a badge formed, and this is the badge here, British Pensacola Veterans, and we've been members of the association now since 1945, 1946, which is a pretty long time. We had about 800 names of men who trained in Pensacola and who were members of the association. One of the members, a fellow named Pat Fry, he's long since dead. He decided that I'd done a good job getting all the people together, and he recommended that I be awarded the MBE, the Member of the British Empire. He without my knowledge, he'd circulated papers around the members, and they all signed up. They sent it up to, I don't know where he sent it to, not Buckingham Palace, but an official body in Whitehall. I can't remember the name of it now. And it was accepted, and I was awarded the MBE by the Queen. I was invited to go to the palace to receive this MBE, and I was invited to take 2 members of the family. I took my wife, and I took my grandson. My son was working in Birmingham then and couldn't make it, but his son, my grandson, he was a civil servant in the Ministry of Defence, and so he and my wife came, and we were entertained in the ballroom of Buckingham Palace while the Queen was bestowing honours, knighthoods and medals of all descriptions to various people, and I happened to be one of them. I was awarded the MBE. I was given the medal and a certificate signed by the Queen that I'd received it because of good work I'd been doing amongst the veterans who trained at Pensacola.
Leon, thank you very much for talking to us.
It's been a great pleasure seeing you two girls interviewing me, and I was only too happy to answer all your questions. Thank you.